practice 6 feel different than practice 1, which was almost a week ago today?
Well, I mean, just the fact that we're in full pads. Both sides of the football are long into the installs. So plenty of mistakes, plenty of good. And what I like to see the most right now is the ebbs and flows of practice. Offense will have some success, defense will have some success. It's not as one-sided as maybe either side of the ball wishes, but I think when you see that competitiveness, that tells you that you're going in the right direction as a program.
Every year is different, like you like to say. Is every quarterback battle different? And if so, how's this one different from last year's?
Just different personalities, of course. Both of them are very outgoing. Both of them have the ability to have great leadership in the huddle. Both of them have spent a ton of time in the meeting room, in the film room, trying to grasp the concepts. And I think we did a really good job over the spring and summer of trying to continue to stay fresh in the installs. And I think that's part of the reason why we've been able to move relatively easy through the first 6 days.
And you mentioned about having to practice differently than other teams, but how do you keep the focus on physicality? And do you still have Midnight Alley as part of your practice routine?
We did it today. So, I think still we're two-spotting. Nobody's sitting around. Try not to waste any time at practice. Try to be very efficient. Every snap up front, it doesn't matter if we're in half pads or full pads, looks like a train wreck. I mean, our offensive line and defensive line are very competitive. Both of them, have veteran players that are returning that want to be great, and so the competitiveness in that group or between those two groups is really good. And then, all the skill kids around create a lot of competitive moments during the course of practice.
Coach, you mentioned the different personnel in terms of the quarterback battle, but have you approached it differently this year yourself, specifically in your evaluation of the quarterback position from last year?
Not really. So some of the same analytics, some of the same, rubric that I would use to figure out who's going to be the starting quarterback are still in place. Things that I've used at other schools.
And as far as any injury stuff that's come up over the last week? Or
just people banged up and bruised.
Gotcha.
Yeah, typical
Standard
football stuff.
And talk about just the replacement aspect of those guys that you lost earlier that you mentioned.
Next man up.
How has it been?
That's why we practice.
How have you seen those progressions in the battle for those positions?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, Brandon was injured, months ago, so we had a pretty good idea what was going to happen. You see a guy like Julius Gillett continue to elevate his play, had a great end of spring, it's just taken off from the same spot. Right now there's a committee of people in the offensive line that have the potential to start, but we'll find out. I mean, it's only day 6 and only our first day that we were in full pads, and there's been a lot of pajama party out here so far this year. I mean, just running around in t-shirt and shorts.
Coach, over 6 days, has there been individually or position unit some trends that have caught your eye?
I think the defensive line has some good depth. We still have a couple of guys that are banged up that take a few reps here or there, but I like what I see there. I think the offensive line continues to grow and develop. I think we have a chance to be really solid in that position. I think there's other receivers. We all know Josiah Freeman's a top flight, an elite receiver, but I think there's other players that are starting to elevate their game, and the game's slowing down for them.
With full pads today, how much more can you get to in practice, and were there any highlights from the action?
I think the biggest highlight was just the back and forth. I thought first team period, defense really got after the offense. I thought third down period was kind of a 50-50. Offense was much elevated than they were yesterday, which is, I think, understood and probably something I anticipated because yesterday was the first day of third down, and seeing Coach Benedetto does a tremendous job with some exotic looks, with pressure and no pressure. And then I thought the second team period today, I thought the offense had the upper hand, and I think that's good. I think when it's back and forth and when it's competitive, I think that's when you're creating a good football program, rather than being one-sided or lopsided.
Between Martin and Mandel, what do each of those guys bring to this QB competition that has made it so difficult, so far?
Well, I think I don't know if difficult's the right word. I think you have to give Martin an opportunity just to grasp the offense. I mean, he hasn't been here as long, giving him a chance to kind of get his feet on the ground, get settled. But he does a really good job. They're both film room junkies. Jaden does a great job of delivering the football. He's a quick decision maker. Both of them have the ability to extend plays, escape the pocket. We could use a little bit of run game with them as well. So, I like the fact that there's multiple threats during the course of one play, and that we can utilize them, and the defenses are going to have to be prepared for that.
Are you seeing in the running back room, who do you see kind of stepping up into that third spot so far?
Julius Gillick right now, but Tariq's done really well. I mean, you could say it's 3A and 3B.
Are you seeing Christian use his mobility in practice?
He does. I think sometimes, quarterbacks want to be so perfect at practice that they forget that there is the, hey, tuck it and run, get 5 yards, get out of bounds. That's a good play still. And so we just need to continue. That's a positive play. That's a good result. We didn't put the ball in jeopardy. There was no compromise of ball security, and we'll line up and play again.
And then my last question. I noticed there's a man with you at all times almost. Practice, games. His name's Ben.
Yep.
I have to ask you about the connection with him and why do you keep him around you?
Ben is our assistant AD for football. Ben, I had the opportunity to work with him at USC. Did a tremendous job kind of in the operations world. Here he's kind of had a lot more responsibilities thrown on him. He's kind of, my walking calendar, reminders, all that, but behind the scenes handles a lot of our travel, our logistics, paperwork, all that stuff. So he's a critical piece. Our players lean on him. He's kind of he's the tie between my office and our players in the locker room, making sure that they get the information on a prompt basis.
Okay. So what do you guys talk about during practice? Or why do you guys always near each other at practice?
Well, I just remind things that I tell him to remind me about later, because usually I write everything down, but my mom would probably be embarrassed of my penmanship, having been a first grade teacher for 35 years. So sometimes I can't read my own writing.
Coach, what have you seen from the tight end room?
I think I'm excited, really excited. We have a couple young, and the veterans that we have, the older kid, Jake Applegate has played a ton of football, maybe not for Fresno State, but he's played a ton. He's a starter coming in here. Brock Liam was going to play a ton of football last year until an injury, but again, I see him as a veteran presence in that room. But Jace Nixon has elevated his physicality, but the two young guys, Dallas Gaius and Braden Ford. Braden's a young man from Elk Grove, right up the road, 6'6", 250 pounds, has really showed up on some film. He's kind of been that young man who's been a pick the click all 6 days so far, which it's early. And again, we're trying to minimize what those young guys have to know right now. That's why they come over in double rep. It's a completely different script, much more watered down, base football.
Coach, with the pads, you added as far as the physicality. Sometimes that tempers can flare in camps. You see it all around.
Of course they do.
Where do you toe the line for allowing those guys to get a little heated, and where you try to break it up?
Well, I'm not gonna squash passion, but when it becomes a distraction, we start losing plays. All of a sudden, you start putting people in jeopardy, their health and well-being. Then I'll probably, either send you for a jog to cool down, or just take you out and you can stand next to me, because that has been proven to be the most boring spot on Saturday.